My crystal ball bust of the week is Rachaad White. He's been not doing very well so far, and Bucky Irving looks kind of better than Rachaad White. Bucky Irving was a guy that pretty much was undrafted in almost every league, and now it's getting to a 50-50 timeshare. He's been way more productive with his touches than Rachaad White, and I can see that continuing. He's a smaller version. He's a little under 200 pounds, but he can see the lane, and he's hitting the holes right, and Rachaad White's averaging like 1.9 yards a carry, and Bucky Irving's averaging almost a little over 4 yards a carry. So I just see the team's going to give Bucky Irving a little more catches. So Rachaad White, the bust this week.
Or as Martin says, Marquise Irving.
Marty calls him by his full name.
He's good pals with him.
Throws the rest of us off.
I'd be pretty nervous if I had Rachaad White in some leagues. I agree with that take, Eric. What I'm going to go with is the running back going against the Lions. Let's take a look at what the Lions have done to running backs this year. Week 1, Kyron Williams, which I believe was Marcus's crystal ball bust pick. Good call. Week 1, 18 carries for 50 yards, 2.8 yards per carry. Week 2, Rachaad White here, 10 carries, 18 yards, 1.8 yards per carry. And then last week, James Conner, 9 carries, 17 yards, 1.9 yards per carry. This week, they get the Seattle Seahawks. Whether it's Zach Charbonnet or Kenneth Walker, I think it's going to be a rough night. Zach Charbonnet has been awesome filling in for Kenneth Walker, but I would not expect that on Monday night.
And for me, my crystal ball bust of the week is going to be Garrett Wilson. Still looks like him and Rodgers are trying to develop a rapport that I don't think is going to be solved in 1 week. Yeah, he did score last week, but he only had 5 catches for 33 yards. The Jets are at home, and they're heavily favored. So game script, unless Goodell says differently, is pointing at the Jets might just use Hall and Allen and not try to deal with the shadow realm of Patrick Surtain. Here are the receivers that have gone up against Surtain this year. DK Metcalf, 3 for 29. George Pickens, 2 for 29. And last week, Mike Evans, 2 for 17. These are all really good players, and I don't see that changing this week with Garrett Wilson and with the game script. I'm not saying bench Garrett Wilson, though that would be a very bold call because you're probably in, too many injuries. You're not going to bench Wilson, but if you're, I wouldn't expect him to be any more than a high-end wide receiver 3 when it's all done. When we look back at the point rankings.
And mine is Derek Carr. I didn't really trust Derek Carr coming into the season. He had an incredible start to the season. He looked really good in weeks 1 and 2, and then crashed back down to earth last week. I think he's on the road this week in Atlanta, and Atlanta runs the ball a lot. They milk clock with their running backs, and they're only giving up 176 passing yards per game through the air. So Derek Carr is going to have good games. He's going to be inconsistent this season. He's probably a borderline starter in 2 QB leagues, but I'm not looking his way if I have options this week. And now let's move on to our crystal ball picks of the week, guys we think are going to smash. And mine for this week is CJ Stroud. I actually had him as a bust when he was in Chicago, but this week I think he's going to really have a great game against a Jacksonville pass offense that has really struggled. They really got smoked last week. Josh Allen could do whatever he wanted. We were talking pre-show. I think that if Josh Allen, if you told him he had to score 10 touchdowns to get a win, to record a win in the win-loss column, I think he would have thrown 10 touchdowns. So Stroud has the weapons. I think he's going to have his best game of the season so far this week.
And my crystal ball pick of the week is Diontae Johnson. The Carolina Panthers were dead, and Andy Dalton came in and performed CPR, brought this team back to life. I see Diontae Johnson over on his catches, over on his yards, and finding the end zone this week.
Yeah, and for me, it's going to be a player and a game that I expect to be the highest scoring of the week. It'll be Brian Robinson Jr. I want every piece I can in this Washington-Arizona game. But Brian Robinson has been a flex player, I think, for a lot of people. This week, I think he upgrades to a very solid RB2. He's been over 14 fantasy points per game so far in the first 3 weeks of the season. And now he's facing an Arizona defense that, dating back to last year, has given up the most fantasy points to road running backs. We just saw it happen last week with Detroit running all over them. And Austin Eckler has already been ruled out for this week with a concussion. So Robinson's going to get all the touches he can handle. He can do it passing, running, in a game that Washington could easily have 4-5 touchdowns. I feel like Robinson's going to have a high likelihood to get in there, and he's going to be a no-brainer. He's going to move past flex territory and smash this week.
Well, I like the sound of 4 or 5 Washington touchdowns, Marcus. I'm going to go with a guy who I was pretty big on the preseason, and that's Khalil Shakir. So far this year, he's had 3 for 42, 5 for 54, 6 for 72, with a couple touchdowns mixed in there. He's caught 100% of his targets. The numbers aren't anything that pops out, but you have to keep in mind they are rolling over teams, just not even playing, throwing the ball much in the third, fourth quarter. So bringing the Ravens, I think that's going to be a closer game, and Josh Allen's going to actually maybe has to throw those 10 touchdowns. I don't know. So they're going to be playing a complete game, and then Khalil Shakir is going to get a complete game's worth of stats. And he's a guy that I think you should be starting every week now.